Right, since the start of the 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing, which, by the way, is seeing historically terrible TV ratings, we have been devoting a segment each day on Washington Watch to highlight some of the atrocities being carried out by the Chinese Communist Party. This is today's segment on human rights on ice.
Beijing 2022, Human Rights on Ice.
Today, we're going to discuss the most talked about human rights violation that the CCP is committing. That is the genocide of the Uyghur minority. Joining me now to talk more about this is Nury Turkel, who is the board chairman of the Uyghur Human Rights Project and also serves alongside me as a commissioner. He's the vice chair of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. Nury, welcome back to the program.
Thank you very much for having me on, Tony.
So on Monday, the European Union bureau chief of China Daily, a notable mouthpiece of the Chinese Communist Party, shot back at the U.S. Holocaust Museum for comparing the 2022 Olympics to the 1936 Olympics, which the Nazis used for propaganda purposes. According to him, there is no comparison between the Holocaust and the vocational training taking place with Uyghurs. What do you say?
Well, that's the best to have, just to say, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. And they also use the words such as, fake news to push back, and they play also whataboutism card. But when you look at it seriously, the similarities between 1936 Summer Olympics in Berlin and Nazi Olympics has been described, and the Genocide Olympics in 2022 in Beijing, the similarities are striking. Just like the Nazi Germany, the Hitler, on the eve of this international games, the Xi Jinping regime built an industrial-scale concentration camps, similar to the Dachau that Hitler built. Xi Jinping is forcing Uyghur women to go through forced sterilization, despite their age. Some middle-aged women have told me personally that they went through forced sterilization. That's the same thing happened to the Jewish woman. Much like the Hitler did, Xi Jinping regime also separated children from their parents. 800,000 Uyghur children reportedly been taken away from their family members. In fact, Secretary of State Tony Blinken's stepfather, Mr. Pisa, was one of those kids locked up in Hitler's children's concentration camps. And also something remarkably similar, forced labor. The Hitler regime used forced labor to build Dachau. Even though we don't know that Xi Jinping used forced labor to build the concentration camps, that has been reported, but we do know that forced labor practices with the complicit effort by the business community have polluted the global supply chain with the consumer products made by Uyghur slaves, including our own country that remains to be the largest destination for Xinjiang exports. So those are the facts. These Chinese individuals either face the reality, they have an open relationship with the fact, with the truth, or try to do the right thing that will stop tarnishing their countries and their people's image, just like the way that Hitler did to the German people.
Now, Nury, I know there's probably several factors, but, it's not just the skiers that are going downhill. So are the ratings for NBC. We saw the lowest viewership in history of the opening night. I would have to think, with all of the attention given to their human rights abuses, the Uyghurs included, that that's having an effect upon people viewing the Olympics and how they're treating the Olympics.
Well, Tony, that's an excellent reminder that consumer activism, whether you buy products, slave-made products in our stores, or viewer activism when it comes to the TV rating. The major TV outlets rely on they depend on their revenue. The revenue is generated depending mostly by how much advertisement deals they got. So the close to 50% drop in NBC's viewership speaks volume. I was talking to a Canadian colleague who serves in the Canadian government yesterday, and he was telling me that the CBA, also CBS, Canadian state-run major outlet, is also experiencing a similar drop in the viewership. So when we speak out in defense of people who have been subjected to genocide because of their religion and because of their ethnicity, when we try to hold business leaders, business community for the complicity, and when we call out IOC that shows a disturbing display of affinity to dictators, authoritarian regime throughout history, matters. It's our moral obligation. And that's what we do as free people. That's what we do as a free society, to speak out. So the status quo is untenable. Now the focus should be, how can we do to prevent, what can we do to prevent the next genocidal regime to use this kind of international games that's supposed to promote friendship, spirit, the human spirit, not the genocide, normalization of the genocidal behaviors. We've seen this all over again. 1936 Hitler, and then Tokyo, and then Rome, and then Beijing in 2008, and then Sochi for Putin. Each and every one game ended up with a war. Should we worry about Xi Jinping invading Taiwan after this? That's a legitimate question for policymakers and citizens of the free world to think about, and it will be very ugly.
Olympics should not be used to whitewash the images of these totalitarian regimes that suppress their own people. Nury Turkel, always great to talk with you. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Tony.